Going on YouTube, Cloverbell's here back with another Scarlet Violet video, and today we're going to be recapping the Lille Regionals that took place over this past weekend. So it was a 530 plus person turnout, so that's pretty good. And before we even talk about the winning teams and the top cut results and whatnot, I want to at least take a look at the usage, so this way we can look at that first and see what kind of mons were really strong throughout the tour. So day one. Here's your top 12 usage, right? So, pretty much no surprise. And in fact, these top 6 Pokemon can pretty much make up an entire team, right? So you have Tornadus, Landorus, you have a Fluttermane, an Ogerpon, and a Rillaboom, right? The Grassy Glide Boys, and then you have Iron Hands. So this could easily make up one team, okay? So no surprise here with the Iron Hands, Fluttermane, and Landorus competing for 1, 2, and 3. Very close race, actually. All right, again, the Iron Hands Landorus combination, come with Intimidate and Fake Out Pressure, just does so much right now into the meta, right? Given the fact that it's extremely physical, like we've said in our other videos, if you can get a good solid Intimidate on some of these options, it just gives you a lot of momentum moving forward, right? And then of course Fluttermane, of course top usage yet again, very strong special attacker. Not a lot of strong special attackers this time around, right? But there is of course the Fluttermane, taking one of the 3 spots here. Then you have the Water Ogerpon, beating the Fire Ogerpon by a pretty good margin, actually 11% on day 1 in terms of a difference. So a lot of people value a little bit more of the defensive approach as opposed to the hyper offensive, more aggressive Ogerpon, I would say. So that's pretty good. And then in that sense here, now you got Tornadus here, of course Tailwind stuff, Taunt, Bleak Wind Storm, and then the ability to change weather on the go with Sunny Day or Rain Dance. That's very important against some of these Ninetales teams, which also did very well. So we'll take a look at those teams in a second. And then of course Rillaboom, again top usage, without a doubt, no questions asked here. But then over here, look at this, from 6 to 12, 4 fire types. We got Chiyu, we got Hisuian, Arcanine in the last slot. Then we have Heatran, and like we mentioned, the Ogerpon. So fire types are pretty strong right now, and for good reason. This is also why a lot of Pokemon are Terra Fire, to not only just resist the Ogerpon, but also just in general from some of these other fire type options. And then also resisting Fluttermane is also pretty important too, right? Then the Urshifu, like we always said that in regulation-E, the Urshifu would decrease in usage, and it has, but the fact that it's still within the top 12, just goes to show you that Urshifu is still very strong. And then Heatran and Chien-Pao here, very standard options here within day 1. Then if we go back and take a look at day 2, okay, there's no Hisuian Arcanine this time. It has dropped out, but welcome back Amoonguss. Again, Amoonguss still a very good Pokemon. Yes, the Ogerpons have been able to, decrease its usage in a little bit. But like we said in our other recap video, we did expect the Amoonguss to rise back up eventually, and now it has. And for good reason. I would imagine, stuff like Clear Smog is on something like an Amoonguss, because you get to wipe away all these boosts like Swords Dance, Ogerpons, the Kommo-O set from Michael Zhang that's running around with the Iron Defense Body Press, or even Clangor's Soul. Dondozo's coming back. So all the more reason for Amoonguss to come in here, okay? And then from here, look at Kingambit yet again entering the top 12. Kingambit's still very strong. Of course, the fact that you can deter a lot of these Intimidate options, like from the Landorus or even the Hisuian Arcanine, the 2 main options, and then just click these +1 or +3 Sucker Punches, right? If you're able to go for the Swords Dance along with the Defiant Boost, also just makes it a really good option. So no surprise there. Then a little bit of a drop from the Tornadus Vest. That's still okay. Look at 1, 2, and 3. Still Landorus, Fluttermane, Iron Hands, but Landorus taking the top slot this time, exchanging places with the Iron Hands. But again, still look, 45, 43, 41, still very close amongst the 3. So a little bit more negligible in that sense, but they're going to be fighting for this slot for a while. Okay, Urshifu creeping back within the top 5, right? So and it's actually ahead of the Water Ogerpon, so that's pretty cool. That I think this is the first time we've seen that all of regulation-E format. Granted, it's still a relatively new format. We're still within the first month of it. And then Heatran cracking the top 6. So Heatran, the Magma Storm set has been rising a little bit. Just being able to trap and just do big chip damage Substitute Heatrans are really good in Trick Room games, so good all around solid Pokemon. And then of course, Flash Fire still a very, very good ability. And then, Chen-Pao, Rillaboom, they're pretty much still within the same spot. I know Rillaboom dropped out, but it's still within the top 12. So, like, did it really drop? I don't think so. If you had to, like, make a team, right, just use any 6 of these. Oh, I shouldn't say any 6, but just use 6 of these 12, right? And then you have a good VGC team that you can just easily jump in and get things going, all right? So, if I were to compare this with, like, Peoria or Sacramento, not really much of a huge change. Maybe like the mons are placed differently, but overall it's still more or less the same options, okay? So until we get like some groundbreaking meta development, I think we're in a spot where, like, yeah, you're gonna have Landorus, Iron Hands, and Fluttermane competing for 1 through 3 rest of the time, okay? And then you'll get stuff like Urshifu, Tornadus, Ogerpon, Rillaboom, Chen-Pao. These are all within like 5 through 12, just jockeying for position, but either way, it's just what it is right now. And from here, there were some like interesting niche teams and options, which we'll go over in a second. But as far as like our top 12 uses from day 1, day 2, this is pretty much it. So Kingambit and Amoonguss were the 2 big ones to recrack the top 12, and as expected, right? Okay, so now let's go ahead and go back into the Victory Road website and let's look at some of these top cut results. Okay, so let's look at the winning team from Simone, aka Sanvi. So it looks like a Reg D team, right? On first glance, this almost looks like the Hirofumi 6. Remember that one with like Columbine Fluttermane, but it's not. It's of course different sets. But if you look at what he's running here, it's pretty much relatively standard. You get Booster Energy Fluttermane with Moonblast, D-Gleam, Shadow Ball, Protect, very standard. Ghost Terra Chen-Pao with Crash, Sucker Punch, Sacred Sword, Woodhammer, Grassy Glide, U-Turn, Fake Out, Rillaboom with Assault Vest, Terra Fire, also standard. And then here we go, Tailwind, a Weather move, aka Rain Dance, Bleak Wind, and Taunt. So, able to make your Urshifu do more damage in the rain, with Mystic Water, Surging Strikes. Then here is the Hisuian Arcanine with the Choice Band set with E-Speed, Rock Slide, Flare Blitz, and Head Smash. And of course, you get Intimidate support here. So overall, it's just a very aggressive Tailwind, hyper-offensive team, nothing that we haven't already seen yet from Regulation D. So it's just all about the player and experience in running the team, able to get good positioning and have these mons in the spot where they can just sweep opponents, right? Like Tornadus, Urshifu, like just clicking Surging Strikes, Fake Out Pressure, Surging Strikes is also a devastating move. And then the Arcanine is able to come in, intimidate things, reduce physical attack damage. So this way, stuff like Fluttermane and even your Rillaboom and Chen-Paos are able to just stay on the field and survive hits and still do damage right back in that sense, right? Fire Water Grass Core, Urshifu, Rillaboom, and Arcanine. So the mainstay of a lot of VGC teams, you always want to get that Fire Water Grass Core going. Here's your speed control with Taunt. With Tailwind. Okay, no Icy Wind here, but that's okay. You do have the Tornadus, with Tailwind, which is more than good enough. As far as like Trick Room matchups are concerned, you pretty much just have to volley for it. Use your Rillaboom, Fake Out Pressure, get the Intimidate support on the physical Ursaluna, and then from there, you use your Fluttermanes and Chen-Paos. You alternate your Protect, stagger the Trick Room stuff, and then from there, once the Trick Room is over, do the job. Okay. Then if we go into Aurelian's team. Okay, so this one is Dragonite, Chen-Pao, so Pao Knight stuff, along with Urshifu, Rillaboom yet again, so Fake Out Surging Strikes. This one is a Scarf Urshifu. All right, this one's Miracle Seed Rillaboom, okay? So more damage with Grassy Glide and Woodhammer. No pivot move here. Instead, you have Protect, so that's pretty cool. Then we have Assault Vest Heatran. I've seen that sparingly in Regulation D, but here it is again. Earth Power, Flash Cannon, Terra Blast, Heat Wave, and then Terra Fairy for the Fighting Resist. You don't want to take close combats. You don't want to take Drain Punches. And then your ground weakness is now neutral. Same with your water weakness. So good idea there with the Fairy Terrestrialization. Farigiraf here, denying priority altogether. And then with Helping Hand along with Trick Room here. So this is basically Trick Room, Tailwind stuff. Okay. And, Helping Hand with a lot of these Pokemon is just going to do a lot of damage. So Farigiraf does have good value here. And then with this Rocky Helmet set, I would imagine this has pretty good physical bulk. So this way you can probably survive like an opposing Urshifu Surging Strikes, boosted with Chen-Pao in that sense, or some other EV spread, where maybe you might even go specialty variant, right? I don't know their spread altogether, but either way, again, this is another like Regulation D team. So the two teams in the finals pretty much Regulation D. But that's okay, right? Because Regulation D teams are still like very, very strong. Then if you look at the rest, okay, so we do get a Dondozo team within the top cut, and I want to talk about Dondozo a little bit later, but I do want to at least point out the ability shield on the Tatsugiri over here from Miguel's team. So ability shield has been something that has been used, for either the Ogerpon stuff, so this way you ignore Mold Breaker and the Heatran doesn't have to take that Ivy Cudgel, or it's for the Weezing shenanigans. Something like Landorus ability shield where, you can intimidate, but they can't intimidate you back, right? Because, of Weezing, and then you get to ignore the Weezing next to you. So there's the idea there. And then you have the Sash Glamora stuff. Glamora Dondozo is nothing new. We've seen that in Regulation C. And then like, Tornadus, Fluttermane, Urshifu, same thing. Like this is actually a something that came about late towards like Regulation C, right? This Dondozo Tailwind offense stuff. Okay, not Regulation D, not C, D. Okay, so then from there, yeah, I mean, it just makes a lot of sense. Then if we look at the other couple of teams here, so this one's actually like relatively standard. So here you get like, again, more Tailwind offense stuff, with Tornadus, Fluttermane, Ogerpon, Ursh. This is the Dark Urshifu, by the way, and then here's Heatran yet again. Life Orb set with Flash Cannon, Terra Grass, Iron Hands, and then this one is the Choice Specs Trick Room set. So as expected here, and then here is another one of those weather moves on Tornadus. Here is the Sunny Day, able to have Heatran do a lot of damage in the grand scheme of things. So shout outs to Turan. Okay, then over here with the Gothitelle, at first I was like, I don't think this should be Perish Trap, and it's not. So it's Fake Out, Protect, Helping Hand, and Psychic. So the whole idea is you want to trap things and have Urshifu deal big damage, and they can't switch out, right? So they have to take the Surging Strikes. Same thing over here, you can reposition as well, switch into Chien-Pao, do a ton of damage with the Urshifu, keep the Gothitelle in the late game. This is the Assault Vest Dragonite here, which we saw Riley do a couple times already. But here's the Thunder Punch set with Stomping Tantrum, Aerial Ace, Extreme Speed. No Outrage, but that's okay. And then over here, the Fire Ogerpon. Here's the Grassy Glide Swords Dance variant, so that's pretty good. Here's another Miracle Seed Rillaboom, so good damage there. And then if we just keep on going down here, yeah, like overall, like this is a pretty good top 8. And then here's another Ninetales baxcalibur team, very, very standard. And I almost, no, we had a Ninetales here, and then we had Iron Hands. That was our variant. So, Icicle Spear, Scale Shot, Loaded Dice set, pretty standard. Ogerpon, Follow Me, Redirection Support. Here's your Rillaboom with Grassy Glide, High Horsepower Woodhammer, the Choice Scarf Landorus, and then here's Icy Wind Dazzling Gleam Ninetales. That's a little bit uncommon, but Dazzling Gleam still is okay. Does good damage as opposed to Moonblast. But Icy Wind and Aurora Veil, and then here's your Kingambit with the Swords Dance setup behind screens. Can very easily sweep teams, especially with those +1 or +2 Kauta sucker punches with black glasses, right? So, all in all, pretty cool top 8. But now what I want to do is just take a look at some of the other archetypes that did relatively well at Lille. All right, so first off, I don't want to just talk about Dondozo. I want to talk about the new type of Dondozo team that people are using, and that is the Screens variant with Alolan-Ninetales. So let's take a look at one of these. So here we go, top 32 from Pascalis, right, Mr. Pastor. And if we take a look at the squad, okay, here's the Dondozo Tatsugiri, Safety Goggles Tatsugiri, along with Unaware Dondozo with Order Up, Earthquake, Wave Crash, and Protect, okay? So pretty standard here, but then you add the fact that you can have Alolan-Ninetales here rather than something like a Tornadus, and just set up screens, okay? And then have the Glamora over here, just click like, Mortal Spins and just do all around poison damage, and then Dondozo can just clean up with Tatsugiri in the back. Then you have Ogerpon, and then the Iron Hands here, so, Swords Dance set, and then Iron Hands here, dealing a ton of damage with Terra Water. So basically the entire team is going to play extra bulky, right? And then after the Ninetales sets up its screens, Dondozo is going to enjoy those screens, because now you're not really dealing that much damage, after all of the boosts that it's going to get from the Tatsugiri. So this is one way to run it. Then as we scroll down, we'll see another couple more variants. So here's another one, two of them actually from Asma Stone, and Rice Johnson. So, right, so let's take a look. 34 and 35. So Azrael over here is running the Heatran with the Ability Shield Tatsugiri, right? So we mentioned that earlier, but here we go. Wave Crash, Order Up Substitute, and then the Ability Shield Tatsugiri. So the Ability Shield Tatsugiri is something that could be on the rise a little bit more now, but same concept here. Alolan-Ninetales, you know, with the Aurora Veil, and here is the Iron Bundle, right? So you got a little bit of a snow aspect here, and then everything is just hiding behind screens, dealing a ton of damage, right? So this is Azra's variant. Then from Rice Johnson, so here's Alolan-Ninetales, and not Iron Bundle, but Baxcalibur, right? And then Dondozo Tatsugiri in the back engine. And then here is the Hard Flame, Ogerpon, and then the Iron Hand. So similar to the first one that we saw. And then if we scroll down, there's another one that we saw, right? Another Screens Dondozo. And then there was a couple of regular Dondozo Glimmora teams, right? Like for example, here, let's look at this one first. So like this is a regular Dondozo Glimmora team. So here we go. Dondozo Tatsugiri with Fluttermane and Glimmora. We know we've seen this in like regulationE. Then you add Ogerpon and Rillaboom, and that's a very easy way to round out a Dondozo team like this. Okay. Then if you do even this one, I think this is even the same kind of variant, you know, the same team. But here we go. Here's the other one from Joaquin Blanche. Okay, same kind of idea. Here's another Tatsugiri Ability Shield. There's the Ninetales, there's the Iron Hands, there's the Urshifu, right? So pretty much the same kind of core, but it's just interesting now to see that Dondozo teams have started to adapt, and now they're including Tatsugiri Ability Shield as well as, you know, adding screens to their team, you know, with the Alolan-Ninetales. And this one is a Freeze Drive variant, so that's going to do a lot of damage into the Water Ogerpon for sure. That's going to be good into something like some of the grass types, of course. And then, you know, even some of the ground types, right? Like we already know what Ninetales can do here. But overall, again, Urshifu behind screens dealing a ton of damage. Of course, you can break through them. And this is Earthquake, Protect, Order Up, Sub. So a Sub Dondozo here. But again, makes a lot of sense. So if you're trying to use Dondozo, right, feel free to use one of these Dondozo Ninetales Screens variants, right? I think they're very, very strong. They're a little bit annoying, and you're going to have an answer. Right, and if you don't, then there's no way to break the Dondozo. All right, let's keep on moving. All right, so I want to talk about Dusclops Ursaluna teams, right? Specifically the Blood Moon Ursaluna, and you know, a lot of them are structured relatively the same, but there are some differences and some variances. So, for example, Nico's team is what looks like the standard 6 for it, right? Where you have Landorus as your Intimidator, so double ground here, and then you have Chiyu, you know, able to have the Blood Moon Ursaluna do extra damage, and then you have the Ogerpon here, you know, because the Blood Moon, the Chiyu, and the Landorus are both weak to water, so you want to be able to support that with Water Absorb. And then you have Iron Hands here, another Trick Room Sweeper, you know, with good Fake Out Pressure altogether, right? The one thing here is that normally you might see Dusclops with Brick Break and Weakness Policy Ursaluna Blood Moon, but not on Nico's team. He's still going with the the Life Orb variant, so still willing to deal damage right away. So instead, you can have Trick Room, Will-O-Wisp, Pain Split, and Nine Shade. This is a very, very standard Dusclops set, right? You're able to neuter those physical attackers with Will-O-Wisp. Then Pain Split, you get to heal your Pokemon over time by cutting some of Dusclops' health. And then Nightshade, you know, for good chip damage over time, right? And then after that, it's just relatively standard. Then you have like special attack damage reduction with Snarl over here. So that's also pretty good. So this is like, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if this was like a bulky support Chiyu set. And then at the same time here, you get Redirection support, and then Fake Out Pressure. So Redirection, Fake Out, Intimidate, Speed Control here. You got all the tools that you want. Then as we keep scrolling down here, we have another team. So this one is a little bit different, right? You still have Blood Moon Ursaluna, and here's the Weakness Policy variant. So this one has Brick Break. So Will-O-Wisp, Trick Room, Pain Split, Brick Break. Okay, so no Nightshade here. But again, Brick Break is not just to self-proc your Weakness Policy. This will break Ninetales Screens or even Grimmsnarl Screens. So there's some good value altogether in Brick Break. And then the Life Orb goes on the Heatran. You still have the Ogerpon Wellspring. Definitely needed when you have Heatran and Ursaluna on the same team. But the interesting one is the Monkey Dory over here with Toxic Chain and then Sludge Bomb, Psychic Taunt. All right, and then here's another Fake Out Pokemon. So 2 Fake Outs. Okay, so that's also very interesting. And then we have Richard's team over here. So this one is pretty much the same 6 as the other one, but this one is the Weakness Policy variant yet again. So here's Will-O-Wisp Haze, and Chirkum. So Haze is also interesting. You know, you might even consider, wait a minute, don't I just remove my own boost? Yes and no. Again, this is still pretty good against other setup Pokemon like Swords Dance and the Dondozo stuff. So, you know, I respect the Haze tech on the Dusclops here. But overall, again, another standard set. So instead of like, you know, the Focus Sash Chiyu, now we have Choice Specs Chiyu, you know, just dealing a ton of damage here, but the Choice Specs along with supporting the Blood Moon Ursaluna. And then, you know, we still have like Cresselia, Ursaluna teams, right? So I wanted to at least spotlight this one. So here's Crest Ursaluna, then you have Fluttermane Chiyu, and then Ogerpon and Iron Hands. You can definitely play it like this, okay, if you don't want to use the Dusclops. So here's Trick Room, Ice Beam, Lunar Blessing, and Helping Hand. Like Cresselia is still like very, very strong. Okay, so people often forget that. All right, and here's your another form of speed control with Icy Wind over here with the Fluttermane. All right, and this is actually Nasty Plot Chiyu with Focus Sash. So you have the redirection support, you have the fake out pressure. You can definitely potentially set this up without a doubt. So that's also pretty cool. But all in all, like you still have like physical Ursaluna teams, right? And even this one, right? So let's click this one from Jorge. So this is like Ninetales Baxcalibur with Heatran and Ogerpon. So you have one kind of core right all together, and then you just slap on Cresselia and Blood Moon Ursaluna. Both very much enjoyed the screen support. This is Swords Dance Ursaluna, by the way, so that's pretty good against like the Intimidate spammers. So you have that going for you. All right, I do respect that. Then if we keep going down here, this is like the, you know, pretty standard Psyspam stuff over here with like Indeedee Armarouge, and then you have Ursaluna here. No Torkoal though, but instead you do have this one. You have the Enamorous, so that's pretty cool. Would love to play this as a rental if I ever get a chance. Then as we keep going down here, what else we got? Can we get any more physical ones? Here's another one. This one has like Regidrago on it slapped on there, so that's also pretty interesting. It's like, you know, pretty standard Trick Room stuff, and then there's a Regidrago here, so go figure there. Can we find a couple of, yeah, see, here's one with like Staraptor and then the Jigglypuff thing, the Screamtail. So here's Trick Room coming from this. Then here's Torkoal, here's Ursaluna, here's Farigiraf. So 2 Trick Room setters. And then, of course, the final Gavastoraptor, which we featured previously from Peter. But all in all, you know, Ursaluna Trick Room setter teams had a pretty good showing. So, you know, it's pretty viable, very strong archetype here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I think we did like pretty much all of them or most of them. You're not going to find them at this point over here, down here. So, but yeah, Dusclops / Cresselia Ursaluna teams, they get the check mark in our book. So, you know, good showcase there. So Kingambit had a pretty good showing, and we spotlighted this team earlier, but you know, you can definitely run it on these Baxcalibur Ninetales teams where you can just hide behind the bulk and set up your Swords Dance and start clicking, you know, priority Sucker Punches. Very strong idea there. Dragon Fairy, Steel Fire with a Grass Core makes a lot of sense. But you can also find it on some of those Tailwind Hyper Offensive teams. I feel like it does really well there. Like over here from Billa VGC, this is not that kind of variant, but with Gothitelle here, Trick Room with Kingambit is actually pretty strong. And then, like we said, the Urshifu with the Gothitelle along with Iron Hands is just very punishing. This is Charm Fluttermane, by the way, so that's also pretty cool. And then here's the Landorus. You know, great combination here with Iron Hands and Fluttermane. Of course, you know, these 4, right? Flutter, Ursh, Iron Hands, Landorus, that's a core already. And then you just slap on Gothitelle Kingambit here. So similar idea. So good job from Mr. Barris. Then here's standard Pound Axe stuff. I want to find the one with Tailwind because that's like another pretty easy one to pick up. Yeah, here from Alex. So here we go. So Tornadus, Landorus with Ogerpon, then Kingambit, then Flutter Ursh, right? This is pretty standard. Okay, the only thing you might have even considered here is something like a Rillaboom, but you know, Kingambit just adds balance overall, right? Because, you know, priority Sucker Punch along with Swords Dance, this is also pretty good into like Trick Room stuff, you know, and it helps to have a Dark type right now against all the Psyspam shenanigans. So Kingambit kind of just sits there, you know, clicks Swords Dance the turn you click Trick Room, and now all of a sudden it can start going for these big Dark type attacks, you know, like a Kowtow Gleave, and then you're in big trouble, right? And then at the same time, you have redirection support, you have Intimidate, and like you do have the Tailwind here. Rain Dance is good also for Kingambit, reduce damage against fire types, along with, you know, dealing big damage with your Urshifu. And then at the same time, here we go, we got Fluttermane just rounding out the team here as another special attacker. So this is another pretty good Kingambit kind of setup. So shout outs to Alex over there. Can we find another one here? Oh, here's a little bit more balanced. This one almost looks like it could have, you know, Tornadus, but they just went with like a Heatran in this sense. But still makes a lot of sense. You have Iron Hands and Kingambit, right? So you have to choose which one you want the Assault Vest for. So Iron Hands will get the Assault Vest. Kingambit will get the Black Glasses / Dread Plate here. And then just play balance, right? Flutter Mane, Landorus here, you know, with the Ogerpon, you know, Intimidate, Redirection, Fake Out. So, and then here's Trick Room, Flutter Mane with Choice Specs yet again. So that's also another way that you can use this. And let me see if I can find another one. Here's another one from Tom. I think Tom pretty much had the same idea. Yeah, pretty much that's the same team. Is there another kind of Kingambit kind of? Oh, this one. Another redirector with Clefairy. So Clefairy Kingambit. So this also makes sense, by the way. And I was doing this with like Kommo-O stuff, you know, with Sinistra, because Clefairy can redirect the fighting type attacks away from the Kingambit. And that's important because Clefairy, you're a fairy type, so the fighting damage is just not going to do that much damage altogether. And then you have Life Dew for healing. This is pretty cool. So no attack Clefairy, just all support. Life Dew, Helping Hand, Follow Me, and then Protect, right? So helping the Kingambit here set up this potential Swords Dance, then Helping Hand, Sucker Punch, just doing a ton of damage, right? And then typical standard Landorus, Ogerpon, Flutter Mane, Iron Hands, right? So that's also pretty cool. Let me see if we can get another. So here's another Tailwind variant. Is this Sunny Day? It is Sunny Day. So this is Sunny Day Tornadus instead of Rain Dance with Flutter Mane, Chiyu, enabling both of them. Kingambit also here for the Trick Room Psyspam stuff. So this is also a pretty good way to utilize something like this with Kingambit. And here's a Mungus. So I do like this team. This is also pretty good. Can we get another one? All right, we'll do one more here. So this one with Bundle from Howlu's team. So, you know, this one is with Rillaboom. Here's the Heart Flame Ogerpon. So Grassy Glide here, along with Swords Dance. And then this one is not Swords Dance, Kingambit. This one is Safety Goggles. So able to get around the Rage Powder stuff. Of course, you know, you can just click Iron Head Assurance. So that's going to hurt a lot of damage. Iron Hands gets the Assault Vest, and then bundle with Icy Wind, you know, Freeze Dry shenanigans. It does hurt, okay? Really good against another Landorus. So, yeah, honestly, there's lots of different ways to utilize Kingambit. It just really depends on you as a player, how you want to structure. Do you want Tailwind with Tornadus, or do you opt to not go with the Tailwind Tornadus and go for another Pokemon in that slot and still keep the other four, okay? All right, how did Weezing teams do? So they had some results here, but you don't run into any one of them until 64 over here. So from Andreas. So anything before that, there was no Weezing, unless I missed it, but I don't think I missed it. I checked like 3 times. So this is a pretty standard Weezing team. I think we built this as a rental the other day as well. You know, one of these archetypes. So you have Roaring Moon, Flutter Mane, and Weezing. There's your starting core. Then the Weezing is either going to have Sludge Bomb or Gunk Shot, and then Will-O-Wisp, Taunt, Protect. Very standard. And then you have Urshifu, Rillaboom, and Ogerpon over here. So Grassy Glide boys, redirection support, and then Urshifu with the Choice Scarf variant, and here's the Tailwind Roaring Moon. So this also is pretty well. Okay, so no Intimidate support here, but again, like we said, you have the Breaking Swipe on the Roaring Moon. So here's your active form of Intimidate, even though you don't have a Landorus. So this is one way to use it. This is a very, very standard Weezing team right now in Regulation E. So shout out to Andreas for the 60 result. There's a couple more. Yeah, here's another one down here. I think this is actually the same team, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, pretty much just, you know, different mon order. But I want to find one with like, here we go. So Nicholas over here. So he has the Arcanine. So here's your Intimidator as opposed to Landorus. But like I said, same starting core with Weezing, Roaring Moon, and Flutter Mane. The Gunk Shot is here as opposed to Sludge Bomb. And then you have Flutter Mane with Psyshock. That's very strong against Iron Hands, right? And then Milotic, which is pretty good here. You know, supporting your Roaring Moon, Arcanine, and Iron Hands. I like this. This is actually a pretty cool variant. And then you have Haze. Oh, this is really, really nice. Scald, Icy Wind, Protect, Haze, Terra Dragon, Milotic. So it's almost like you have a Roaring Moon team, right? But you have a Weezing here as opposed to something like an Ogerpon, for example, right? So I like this. And then you might say like, okay, again, how am I going to use like Weezing Arcanine stuff? So the idea here again is if you switch out the Weezing, the Arcanine ability will activate. okay, and then just pivot out the Weezing for something else, like maybe even something like a Milotic, for example, right? So, and then what you can also do is do Weezing Milotic stuff, and then they might lead the Landorus, you know, thinking like, oh, you know, the competitive doesn't get activated, you know, the Weezing is over there. But then what happens is if you switch the Weezing out, now the Intimidate activates, and now the Milotic gets the competitive boost, and now it can start sweeping after all of that. So you can kind of bait your opponent into thinking like that. I've seen it a couple of times, so it does make sense. But here's another variant where you can use this. So again, because you have Intimidate, you don't need Breaking Swipe. Now you go back to Acrobatics, Terra Flying, all right, and then you still have Tailwind support, you know, for some of these mid-tier Pokemon that can really outspeed the rest of the meta if you do get that Tailwind off. So makes a lot of sense. I think there's a couple more here. As far as like Weezing teams, I know there's at least one more. I saw it towards the end. Yeah, oh, right here at 128. I think this is the same thing, right? Yeah, Breaking Swipe, Choice Specs Flutter, Gunk Shot. Okay, so this is pretty much the other same 6. So overall, like, again, you had about 3-4 Weezing teams, but 2 of them were pretty much the same. So, you know, not a strong showing from Weezing, you know, with these 128, right? But still, it did get results, and we'll see where Weezing goes, you know, as the format progresses, as we head into Toronto. Alright, so where would Michael Zhang's team come along and come into play here? And did it? Yes, it did. So Eric Rios here, we already know how good of a player Eric Rios is. So he decided to have a little bit of a variation, right? And include, you know, pretty much same kind of stuff, where you have Tyranitar, you have Iron Defense, Body Press, Kommo-O, then you have the Arcanine here, right? So you have the Arcanine Tyranitar combination, but then you add something like Cresselia here as opposed to the Iron Bundle. And now things get a little bit interesting, because now you can include Trick Room here along with Lunar Blessing, Icy Wind. Here's your Rillaboom, here's your Flutter Mane. So another bit of an adaptation to the Michael Zhang team, but either way, you know, more or less can still function, you know, the way it normally can. But Cresselia gives you something to think about, right? Because now you get a speed control Trick Room aspect to this. You get Lunar Blessing, so now you can start healing your Kommo-O over time. So now this thing is never gonna die, okay? All right, so you might say, like, oh, you can just click like special attack moves. Well, no, because now the Cresselia is just gonna keep healing it over time with Lunar Blessing and all that stuff. So pretty cool idea there. Now there was a couple more variations. I think there was at least one more Tyranitar, Michael Zhang kind of like team. I think it was Costa that was running it, right? The caster. Yeah. Oh no, here. Albert. So Albert here. I think this is the same team. Did they build together? I think they did. Yeah. All right. So now let me go back. There was one. Was it the original version? I think it was, right? Yeah. Here we go. Here's Costa. Yeah. This is pretty much it. So here's the Iron Bundle as opposed to the Cresselia. Again, like how Arcanine, you know, able to boost the damage of Tyranitar and Rillaboom all, and you know, this is one way to get around the Intimidate stuff. But all in all, like, again, Icy Wind Iron Bundle makes a lot of sense as opposed to something like Trick Room Cresselia, which still also to me also makes sense. But I think that was pretty much it for the Tyranitar stuff with the Kommo. So, you know, there's a couple teams there, right? So it did have a bit of a showing. Will we see that in Toronto? I think we will. All right, so next I also want to take a look at Farigiraf teams. So we already know that from second place from Aurelian, they also ran Farigiraf. But as you scroll down, there's actually a pretty good Farigiraf showing here. So let's look at the next one here at rank 12 from Bart. So this is pretty standard stuff here, right? Dragonite Chenpao with Farigiraf, and then you have, you know, your Fire Water Grass Core with Urshifu, Heatran, and Rillaboom. So you get Imprison Trick Room here, which basically says we're gonna deny your Trick Room, and against the Tailwind teams, we're going to use our Trick Room, and then we're just going to rely on 4 priority Pokemon here and just do the damage in that sense, right? So this is another way to consider that. So also makes sense. Then as you scroll down, you know, you'll see more variations of Farigiraf. So here's actually another one. It's pretty much the same team, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, from Tio. Yeah, here's Assault Vest Heatran here. Choice Scarf Urshifu. Here's the Rocky Helmet Farigiraf here, and you know, more or less the same idea. But as we keep going down, like you'll see something like this, right? So double Trick Room setter, like we covered this team already, but like again, one way to beat Trick Room is to use priority Pokemon. But now you add the Farigiraf, and now all of a sudden that's not even possible, right? So good idea there from Emir. And then now you can we keep going down here? Yeah. Oh, this one was a pretty cool team. This one was like crazy. What is this? Spectre Grimmsnarl team. So we saw something like that back in Regulation D, and now you have Heatran and Landers here with the ability to shield Heatran, right? We seen that against for the Ogerpon, but Trick Room Imprison yet again. So Screens variant, and then all of a sudden the Spectre is the sweeper. Okay, so this is pretty cool. I want to use this team. All right, so that's also nice. But again, you can kind of see like Farigiraf is just pretty much it's not going to come to every matchup, but the matchup that it does come is going to do a lot, right? Here we go yet again. Marcus Statter, same idea, you know, pretty much the same as the other Dragonite Chenpao Farigiraf teams. And then if we keep going down, can we get a couple more? Same thing, right? Here's another one from Antoine. Is this the... All right, so this is Life 4 Heatran, Assault Vest, Rillaboom. So some variants in the sets there, okay? Right, and again, you always want to check, right? It's just because it's the same 6 doesn't mean they have the exact same team or the same set. You always want to, you know, scout for that. Here's the Eric Rios team, right, with the Farigiraf, with the Regidrago stuff. So it still does well even now. I've seen this team, you know, they're still being played throughout the online Limitless tours. Makes sense, right? It's still like very, very solid. So shout outs to Eric for that kind of idea back in Reg D. But was that it? We're getting close to the end here. Oh, there's another one. Another Farigiraf team. Again, just makes a lot of sense in terms of like how that team functions. That's one of the best Regulation D teams in all honesty, right? See, now this one didn't have it, but it had Sinistcha, right? So so I guess what you want to do here is like, if Regidrago does take some damage, you can heal it back up with the Sinistcha. And then you also get a Trick Room aspect to the team with the Iron Hands as well. So that's also pretty interesting there. But either way, you know, Farigiraf is still, you know, a bit of a niche mod, but it's still like good. And the matchups that it does come, it can do something. So, you know, just be aware. And it is a good mod to use on some of these teams. So I do want to take a look at Psyspam teams. You know, again, you hate to see them, but you got to know how to deal with them, right? So let's take a look at Baptiste's team, right? We kind of saw this earlier, but here's Indeedee Armarouge with Ursaluna and the Aurora-Angura here with Instruct Shenanigans, and it's telepathy, so you can click Earthquake a bunch of times. And then here's the Enamorous, good fairy type damage against stuff like all the dragons, right? So I could see Enamorous, you know, having some good play this time around, just because Dragon Terras are running around and there's a lot of good dragons this time around. So I can definitely see it, and it has been already being used, right? A little bit. So as we keep going down, you'll see stuff like this along with the Torkoal. So Indeedee Armarouge, Torkoal, and Ursaluna, and then you have the Lilligant stuff with, you know, after your eruption, and then all of a sudden you slap on the Regidrago. So this is also pretty cool because, you know, in the sun you could do after you Dragon Energy, so it does make sense in that idea. So I do like this idea, so that's pretty clever there. Then as you keep going down and looking for more Psyspam, this one is a little bit more traditional, but oh no, this is actually the same kind of thing with Regidrago. So maybe now you can even just consider using Regidrago on these Psyspam teams, and it makes sense, right? But here's one with Monkey Dory along with Tailwind stuff. So Indeedee Armarouge, weakness policy with weak armor. Okay. Are we clicking? What are we clicking? Are we clicking? Oh, we're clicking U-turn, huh? All right, that's gonna do a lot. So I'm not sure about that one, but yeah, I can totally see this. And then here's the Okie Dokie Guard Dog Shenanigans with Bulk Up, and it has Psychic Seeds here. So, you know, interesting setup idea here with Indeedee and Okie Dokie. So I respect it. And then as you keep going down, can we find a little bit? Here's another one where you have the Enamorous here. So I do like that. Can we find a couple more here as we scroll down? All right, this one is with Ogerpon. So Indeedee, Torkoal, Lilligant, and Armarouge, of course. So Indeedee, Armarouge, Lilligant, Torkoal, Lilycole, Indeedee, Armarouge, and then Fluttermane, Ogerpon. So, you know, the Torkoal can enable the Fluttermane do a bunch of damage, and it also helps the Ogerpon as well do a ton of damage altogether. Makes sense. You know, you can see all these different archetypes, which is actually pretty cool. a little bit more Psyspam. I thought I saw a lot more. Oh, this one with Gallade. Yeah, this one. I wanted to cover this one because this was a thing back in Sacramento as well. So Gallade, which is also called Scarlet here, right? You got in trouble for that. But Trick Room with Sacred Sword, Psycho Cut, and Sharpness, it's going to do so much damage here. You have to respect this kind of variant because you will run into it if you're going into Toronto. But I like this Torkoal set with Eruption and Yawn. So you can either play it, you know, offensively, or you can also use it as a support option in force repositioning with this Yawn, and then Life Orb, of course, on the Armrouge here. But definitely respect the Gallade here. I you know, when I went against it the first time, I was like, what does this do? And then I realized, oh, yeah, now, you know, this is also pretty good against Dondozo, right? You get to ignore those boosts, all those Iron Defense boosts. Yeah, you get to ignore all of that. So, you know, Sacred Sword, Psycho Cut, you know, makes a lot of sense. Armor, and then, you know, Iron Hands doesn't want to be taking that either. Can we find a couple more Psyspam teams? Let's see. You know, we're getting close to the 120s. I don't think so. I think that was it. Yeah. So that was it. So again, if you're trying to play, you know, Psyspam, you know, Indeedee, Armrouge, Torkoal, Ursaluna, there's your 4, and then the other 2 is pretty much up for grabs, you know, depending on how you want to structure it. All right, lastly here, so I noticed some pretty cool Hisuian-Goodra teams that you could probably even use yourself. So like, here's Hisuian-Goodra Screens with Grimmsnarl, right? So Light Screen Reflect, Spirit Break, and Thunder Wave. Good speed control there from Yuki's Grimmsnarl there. Then, of course, the Tailwind stuff, and then the setup with the Goodra. So, you know, you might say, look, shouldn't I just use Kommo-O here? Not necessarily, right? Goodra's still like doing the job that it can do. And now you get to have this aspect of heavy slam, you know, for the steel coverage, snipe the Fluttermanes here. So it does make sense. Shell Armor also is a pretty good ability. Okay, and then it's just like Tailwind offense with Tornadus Ursh, and then Ogerpon, Rillaboom, the Grassy Glide Boys, and then Swords Dance over here. So double Prankster use, right? You very rarely see that. I never see Tornadus and Grimmsnarl on the same team, or at least never see them do well all together. So this is a first. So good job to Yuki. We already know who Yuki is. He's done very well over the years in VGC. Then we go into Carmine's team here. Another Hisuian-Goodra team. Landorus, Iron Hands here. But then look at this Thundurus making an appearance in regulationE. And here's the Eerie Impulse, right? So now you're weakening special attack damage. Hisuian-Goodra is already going to be very physically bulky. You already have the Landorus there. So now how do you beat the Goodra, right? If you're just weakening both types of attacks, right? It's just going to potentially sweep you here. And then Fluttermane Chiyu for like instant special attacking offense along with the Iron Hands here. So I do like this team. It makes a lot of sense. Then over here in Simon's team, so like again, Hisuian-Goodra Screens, but then here's the Annihilate, okay, along with the Ogerpon here, and then here's the Hisuian Arcanine. You think like Landorus wants to come to this. Landorus does not look good at all. Like you have you have to go against an opposing Intimidate, you have to go against an Ogerpon here, the water one. Then you have to go against Goodra that, you know, with Terra Flying, might I add, that could just set up in your face along with Life Dew, and then you have the Annihilate for Defiant. What Landorus wants to come to this? All right, so smart idea to really support the Goodra here with speed control, along with the Cresselia here with Lunar Blessing. We already know what this does, along with Life Dew over here, and then, you know, behind Grimmsnarl Screens, this is a very good trio altogether. And now you just add Arcanine with the Intimidator. You got to Follow Me redirection support. So Fire, Water, Grass Course coming here. And then you have the Annihilate over here, which is really good. You know, if you're trying to, you know, fear, or if you fear taking a fighting type attack, you can switch in the Annihilate there, and it just gets whiffed because you're a ghost type as well. So I just want to point these 3 teams out. 3 really cool Hisuian-Goodra teams. All right, in this ending section of the video, I wanted to spotlight some niche teams. Well, not necessarily niche teams, but like teams with like uncommon Pokemon that one might expect in regulationE. And one of those Pokemon is Gliscor with Toxic Orb, Poison Heal. So this is dual wing beat, high horsepower, Swords Dance. Okay, that's scary if it gets Swords Dance up. And then you add Milotic over here with Life Dew to be able to heal it over time, you know, because of the Toxic Orb. Now, Gliscor's attack is not all that great. Okay, but it does have some pretty good bulk, and now you make it really, really strong with, you know, Swords Dance, and you can set that up with, you know, Fake Out over here. Then you have Arcanine with Intimidate support, and then Pheasantipede is another Pokemon here that maybe you know, you might not have been expecting to see it at this level in, you know, in VGC, but it does a lot here, right? You got Tailwind support, you got Roost, you know, so you have good longevity. Then you have Dazzling Gleam here, and then it's just like a very, very bulky Pokemon that can support the rest of the team here. So, and it's annoying to get rid of. So, you know, I could definitely see something like this working. So, shout outs to Jamie Chen over here for like really, really creative team building here. And then you just have standard stuff here with Chien-Pao, Arcanine, Rillaboom. So don't forget Gliscor and Chien-Pao, they're going to do a lot of damage because of the, you know, the sort of ruin reduction. So makes a lot of sense here. Then we go into, whatchamacallit, Jamie Boyd's team, right? So if we go over here, let me go to Jamie, right? Oh yeah, there we go, Jamie Boyd. So Mr. Boyd here, he also is a fan of Salamence, just like us. So it's almost like we have like minds. But Jamie Boyd had a very different approach to, you know, trying to use Salamence. And of course, Jamie Boyd is very famous for using these unconventional Pokemon on these teams, but they just work, right? So here we go, Salamence here with Tailwind, right? Makes sense. Special variant with Draco Meteor and Air Slash. Then you have Great Tusk here, and then you might not. Great Tusk disappeared off the face of the planet in Regulation D, but then all of a sudden, you know, you add it with something like Salamence here. Then you have basically Choice Scarf Earthquake next to Salamence, which is a flying type, and now all of a sudden it's doing great, very, very much big damage. And then you have the Ninetales Screens aspect, which is what we did also when we did our team building there. And then you have another fairy type over here with Sylveon with Hyper Voice, Calm Mind, and Yawn. So again, Yawn forcing reposition, forcing sleep, but Hyper Voice just doing so much damage. And then at the same time, you have Ceruledge over here. So look at this. Fire Water Grass Core, Dragon Fairy Steel. You got all the cores, right? Then this has, like, again, Swords Dance variant, right? So the Ogerpon is able to set up here. And here's the Ceruledge able to support the the Ogerpon here is able to support the Ceruledge and the Great Tusk, right? Because they're both relatively weak to water. So now you have to get through this first. And then you have the Ninetales Screens, you know, just doing all kinds of things, making the entire team bulky. And then if you look at this Ceruledge here, look, Assault Vest Ceruledge with Bitterblade, Poltergeist, Terra Blast, Terra Fairy, and Shadow Sneak. So this is really good against a lot of the fighting types. So like, shout outs again to Jamie Boyd here. This might be the most creative team that I've seen in Lille Regionals. So that's pretty cool. Then you have over here for Mr. Audi over here. So this had a Talonflame here. So we haven't seen Talonflame in a very, very long time. So nice to see it come back here. And then here's the Screamtail, another lesser commonly used Pokemon. And then you have 4 standard stuff. Okay, but Brave Bird, Bullowus, and Tailwind. So something that we haven't really seen in RegulationE, but again, it just works. Especially with Encore and Disable. Oh, that's a set over there. Then you had Mr. Joan with Tinglu, which is something that we haven't seen since Regulation C. Okay, with Tinglu, Heavy Slam, Stomping Tantrum, and Taunt. And then you have Arcanine, Iron Bundle, and then you have an Annihilate, and then you have Ogerpon, Rillaboom. So, you know, the Tinglu reducing special attack damage altogether. Then you have an Intimidator on your team. So now you could potentially just set up this Annihilate here. And then you have Play Rough on the Ogerpon. So that's going to be doing some pretty good damage. And then this is the Rock one variant, might I add. So Ivy Cudgel and Horn Leech. So Rock type Ivy Cudgel, really good against a lot of the fire types. Also pretty good into like Iron Bundle, for example. No, I take that back. Right. And then at the same time, you know, just having Rillaboom here, you know, with Fake Out, the Arcanine over here, you know, with Snarl and Will-O-Wisp. So this is like very standard classic Arcanine play, like regular Arcanine play, right? Which is something that not too many people are using. People are using like the Hisuian version, but now all of a sudden you can use regular Arcanine and you don't have those 4 times weaknesses anymore. So, you know, you have that going for you. So you're just reducing special attack damage and you're reducing physical attack damage. So now stuff like, you know, Tinglu and the Annihilate are just able to set up here and then, you know, just finish the game off here. So pretty cool teams, but all in all, you know, that was pretty much it from Lille Regional. So let me know what you thought of our analysis here with this regional. And if you're trying to do some team building for Toronto or some upcoming local tournaments or mid-season challenges, make sure you sub to the channel. If you take a look at the video description or in the comment section, there is a link to join the channel with the tier 3 sub. And with that sub, you're able to schedule a Discord session with me. And then we get to build the team from scratch. I show you how to do all the EVs. and I show you how to do all our terror types. We even get to test the team a little bit. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure you sign up on the channel with that tier 3 sub. And then, you know, every single video has a join button, so you can even join that way. So 3 different ways to join the channel. But yeah, we'll be back with another video in the next one, guys. Peace out and have a good one.